My wife and I have been together for 5 years, married for 4. She had a bad marriage before me and had a child. I had no problem stepping up to the plate to help her raise her child. The father wants nothing to do with my wife or his kid. To the point, I had 2 friends that I've had since I was 16. They were both female and I had dated one of them for 4 years, but we split up agreeing that we made better friends than an actual couple. This never happens in real life apparently. She's always been my go for advice, and I made our friendship 100% transparent for my wife when we first met, and never did anything. Out of habit, my friend and I still said we loved each other, but more of a platonic love. We both loved our current partners and never wanted anything between each other. However, after a few years this took a toll on my wife and she asked me to stop telling her that I loved her. So I explained this to my friend and she said she understood and would have no problem doing so. Another month or so I still have 100% transparency with my wife as to make her feel comfortable. I got deployed and my friend had just had her baby and asked me if I wanted to FaceTime to see her. I said yes, naturally happy for her and her husband. After a nice chat and meeting her new son, I got a call from my wife a few days later asking if I had talked to her KN FaceTime. I told her that I had and why, also telling her what we had discussed. My wife then didn't talk to me the rest of my deployment. When I got home I explained that I was sorry it hurt her feelings and wanted to make things better. She told me to never talk to her again. I tried to explain that it was just a friendship and that neither of us wanted a relationship. My wife took it upon herself to call her and tell her that if she didn't stop talking to me forever that she would tell my friend's husband that we were having an affair. She did not tell me any of this. I quickly noticed she had blocked me on everything, including my number. I had no idea what happened, so I confronted my wife and she told me that she was certain I was cheating on her, and that my friend and I were having an affair. She then told me that she had called her and only asked her to not talk to me anymore. I was slightly upset but stood by her decision and held no grudge. I feel like this event led to the breakdown of everything. She started to have no trust in anything I did, constantly going through my phone, and she would constantly lock her phone, or lock herself in the bathroom talking to someone on the phone. She started blaming her job for her unhappiness. I told her that I could pull extra hours at work if she wanted to quit to find a new one. She quickly quit her job and made no attempt to find work again. I was enlisted at the time. She said she hated that I was gone all the time, so I offered to go reserves to be with her more. She said that would fix it. So I got a civilian job that paid decent, but we had to move. The job is stressful and I'm not very fond of being a civilian. She has now come to the conclusion that I need to get out of the military and quit my civilian job, and we to move again, and that's the only way she'll be happy. I feel like I've given up everything for her to be happy. I'm trying to show her the logic that there is no way for us to survive if neither of us works. I love my wife and don't want a divorce, but I feel like she will never be happy and I'm not sure how to fix it. She blames everything on me and says that I'd be happier with someone else, or says she's leaving again. I'm currently deployed again, and the last week I was home she wouldn't talk to me or spend time with me and our daughter. She would lock herself in the bedroom all day. Then at night she would call me names and say I don't care about her and I never spend time with her. Yesterday, I wanted to surprise him by cooking one of his favorite meals, and although I was busy, I took time off work to cook. I even went grocery shopping to get what I needed. Later, as I was setting the table, his mom called. I told him he didn't have to answer, but he did. Like usual, she asked what we were having but acted surprised that I cooked this meal. She then went on to tell him she cooked meal and told him to come over. He said okay, which shocked me. I said, seriously? As he started dressing up getting ready to leave. He told me no offense, but this meal that his mom cooked was even more of a favorite than the one I cooked, and grabbed his keys and left. I felt awful. I took his plate and threw it out, then ate my portion. As I was about to put the plate in the dishwasher, he got home looking angry, saying his mom lied about cooking that favorite meal and used it as an excuse to force him to eat dinner with her. I was shocked, but he sat down telling me to go ahead and reheat dinner. I told him no dinner after he abandoned it. I threw it out. He said what? And I told him he disrespected my time and effort and chose to go eat with his mom instead. He began yelling at me, asking if I really did that, then called me petty and horrible, then went upstairs saying what I did was 100 times worse than what his mom did. I definitely feel like I let my anger and frustration get the best of me, but it really felt unbearable having to live like this for so long. By the way, I'm 26 and he's 28. To make one thing clear, and that's the fact that my husband only does this when it comes to food. He lived with his mom, attended community college, and loved and still loves her food and is used to it. She gave me recipes to make and I try to do that, but he keeps switching homes just to eat what he feels like. I will be sitting down with my husband soon. After he breaks the silence, I'm just giving him the space he said he wanted. I will also be pushing for couples counseling, although he's always been against it, but we'll see how things go. I'm not gonna lie, I still feel upset and like my efforts aren't being appreciated. His mom is definitely onto something with her little upsetting stunts. I realize how important boundaries are, but also realize how enforcing can be difficult. I'm hoping and praying that we will tackle this issue so that our marriage won't suffer. But if he's still somehow unable to do his part, then that's on him, and I'm no longer willing to go through similar stuff and just take it. My dad died and I'm scared my family won't get along. So yesterday after my dad comes home, he eats what my mom made for him. Eggs and Spam. To be clear, he has a pre-existing medical history of high blood pressure and gout. First found out when he was admitted to the hospital in 2015 when he fell ill. And we basically had to force him to go to the hospital. He didn't want to go. He was put on medication since, with changes to them maybe a year or so ago. So back to when after he ate. My half-sister heard a thud around 740-ish and told me to check. She thought maybe my parents are arguing. I go down and see my dad on the kitchen floor, my mom behind him a few feet away, and I hear him snoring. I ask my mom a question, get worried, run back upstairs and knock on my sister's door. She calls my other sister and also tells me to stop wasting time, call 911. I was scared and frantic. I wish I called 911 or saw him when he came in so I could maybe have called sooner. They get frantic too and we all start yelling at each other, and I try to maintain order also as I'm talking to 911 person. At some point in all of this, my brother-in-law yells for help and I help him turn my dad onto his side. He said he could choke on his saliva. My dad stops snoring and we start panicking. The EMS tells us how to perform CPR, but my sisters keep yelling, and so I try to get them working together. They finally start working on it. One is doing compression and the other giving him air and sometimes rotating. Fire department and ambulance gets here and they start doing the same thing but also have defibrillators, and honestly, I'm just in shock still. It was maybe 8:03 p.m. when they came or so, I don't remember, it's all a blur. I checked my phone for timestamp, but I called twice so I forgot when original call was placed. They called it at 8:50 p.m. and I just began to lose it. My aunt comes and my sister is trying to call my dad's work to let his bosses know. We talk about how we want my dad's arrangements and agree on cremation. We don't have the money for anything else, but also my sister wants the remains. My mom is bipolar schizophrenic and my sisters and bro-in-law don't get along her because of a whole history that would keep you here forever if I tried to type it. My dad was a bad person, but he still chose us and tried his best to provide regardless of his fallacies. He had my mom's back too, saying he wouldn't kick her out or place her in a mental home. My sisters kinda want that, I think, but I'm scared to talk about it. My mom is okay sometimes, but also acts up of her mental illness sometimes, and my dad and I were her constants regardless of what happened. My mom is old and still wants to benefit from some social security services that my dad had, but my sisters and I think we should get a majority control of his account. There's a lot of renovations to be done. He ignored upkeep of the house for a number of years, example, the roof. My mom is not very sad about the ordeal. She had a long history of mental abuse from my dad and I understand, but we for some reason stayed together. It how to move forward except for one moment at a time, and I'm still waiting for funeral home to come pick up his body. It's 8:13 a.m. now, been waiting since night before. And I have been crying, but also I can't sleep, and I'm sorry if this doesn't meet guidelines. I just need to vent. Even though I told a few friends, I'm still in disbelief. How this will moving forward. I believe it can though. But it's hard to stay positive. I have a large family. Mostly aunts and female cousins aside from mom, stepmom, stepsister and grandmother. I don't know how to say this, but all those women I mentioned above are into teasing and joking. They've formed a unit, which I admit is kind of toxic. And they'd tease and roast every new woman that enters the family by marriage by setting up tests to see if they deserve to be part of the family, or roast their looks and styles to the point of breaking confidence and self-esteem down. Then after a few months of teasing, they'd announce that they've finally welcomed them into the family. The newest member would join in on the teasing too, which is crazy, as my dad says. When I first introduced my then girlfriend, now wife, I made it clear that I didn't want any of the women in the unit to come at her or harass her, not even with a single word. They went behind my back and roasted her looks and job, and I discovered they've been doing it on Facebook. I had them apologize one by one after they gave the "we're just testing the water to see if she's capable to be part of the family" excuse. They didn't want to apologize, but once I said I wouldn't invite any of the unit unless they apologize, including my mom, everyone immediately apologized and brought gifts for my wife. My wedding was 2 weeks ago. There was talk about the women in the family wanting to pull a prank on my wife by wearing white, and called it the ultimate test to see how my wife react. My brother warned me, so I announced that if any one of them showed up in white, I'd have them kicked out, including mom. They said this wasn't true and they'd never do such thing. But they showed up to my wedding one by one wearing white dresses, and each and every one of them was told to leave after they tried giving excuses by either making scenes or getting the men involved. The senior women of the unit, who are mom and aunts, also showed up in white but refused to leave. I threatened to take harsher action and mom was pissed, telling me to step aside, but I didn't let her in. I had her leave while the men in the family were watching stunned. Dad was on my side and supported me a lot. I felt absolutely awful because my wedding was being interrupted by them making scenes. My wife was hurt beyond measure, but the women in the family were pissed. My cousin blasted me on social media later, saying I excluded all the women from the wedding because my wife was so insecure she couldn't handle another woman's presence at her wedding. I had an argument with them and mom berated me, saying it was supposed to be a prank, but I said they were taking it too far. Mom said I took it too far by kicking them out because they were trying to get reaction from my wife to see if she was one of those Bridzillas and were going to change soon as prank was over, but I ruined my own and entire wedding by reacting so aggressively. I stopped talking after she said I had to bring my wife and apologize. I haven't seen the lot of them in 2 weeks and they've excluded me from everything. I just want to explain that, this has been happening for years. The men in the family are split on this behavior. Some of them encourage it, like my uncle and my cousin's husbands. One is now an ex, and some are against it, like me and my dad and brother. The women claim that there's nothing hurtful in what they do because they claim they're just looking out for us men, and that their goal, ultimately, is to make sure the women who enter the family are decent. My dad always ends up arguing with my mom and grandmother, since they're the ones who started this whole thing with their behavior and attitude towards other women. And I'm not sure if I should mention this, but my male cousin, who's a middle schooler, said he'd make sure to leave the country before even meeting any woman because of this, and it made me chuckle. Also, the dresses they showed up in were simple white dresses, nothing over the top, but still were white dresses. I realized they went ahead with their plans even after I stated what I'd do in that case.